We're recording over there.
Yeah, we're recording.
All right, we are
We're live.
going live now. So this is Lawyer Talk Live for those of you who just tuned into Blitz. And I know all the millions of listeners not only wait for us every single Wednesday to hear the Blitz, then they immediately shut off the radio and go right to channel 511 to hear Lawyer Talk Live. So thank you everybody for the patronage. Anyway, this is.
I saw you were taking notes during today's show. There,
I was.
You were really trying to help some people out.
You know, we do our best.
3 callers and a text.
3 callers in a text, and you know, it's the typical stuff. It seems like we're back to the basics of
lawyer talk,
lawyer talk,
call of legal advice on the Blitz.
First world problems.
You know what I haven't heard in a while, which may be telling. I used to say forever when I was doing those call-ins, it was always you would always get a question about child support, child custody. We got that. And then you would always get a landlord-tenant question. We got that. And you know what we used to always get that I'm not getting now? A car deal gone bad. Almost always I would get car deals gone bad. And I wonder if that reflects like the car market out there right now. There's just not too many car deals going on. Or it's difficult. The used market is
or that people are just taking the bumps.
Yeah. They're just
like, you know, I mean, well, I got something. I couldn't find anything else. I guess I get it fixed. And it just is no longer, you know, I mean, it's necessity now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So it's like, well, what was my option?
And maybe that's it. I mean, there was, but it just seemed forever. It was always like, well, I bought this car and I put it in my boyfriend's name and then my boyfriend was going to pay for it. Now we moved out. There was always questions like that. And I always tell people, never buy a car in somebody else's name. Let me say it again. Never buy a car in somebody else's name.
Think about that sentence
and never
dissect it. Yeah.
Don't co-sign on a loan.
You know, my buddy, he just needed some help. And there's always like, I co-signed. So, and he didn't pay. Now what do I do? And it's like, well, guess what you did? You just inserted yourself in the chain of collection command. Yes. And now, like when the bank can't collect against him or her, he's collecting against
you. Just raised your hand.
Right. Oh, I'll cover it. No big deal. Yeah. So your friend had some tough times, credit problems. You thought, help him out. I got good credit. Now you owe 20 grand on a car loan to like buy here, pay here somewhere. And the interest is 15% or something. I mean,
now your credit's shit.
Yeah. Now you're going.
Tell me how you feel, Brett.
Yeah. Now you're
not
going
that I've been caught in that. I never have actually, but it's like, boy, you hear those stories and it's like, what were you thinking?
Well, love is a very powerful force. Yes, the power of love. I mean, Huey Lewis, one of the great American poets of the 80s. The power of love. He was a mathematician. He's got a PhD in mathematics.
I don't doubt it. Dude, a lot of these entertainers, comedians are brilliant people. They are. It's crazy.
Music and math are closely related, they always say.
Well, like true. I say, it's the rantings of a madman or the lamentations of a genius. It's a very fine line.
Well, we all know Huey Lewis, what he is. He's a genius. Pure genius. It's the power of love. Anyway, so I don't even know how we got off on that. But the text, I mean, I got to talk about adoption. I mean, this warms my heart that somebody's out there providing foster care for needy kids and they want to adopt, because every time you adopt a kid, that's a kid that's not getting passed along into some, you know,
it takes them out of the system.
Out of the system. Right. Yeah. And
we know that system's just golden.
Right. Yeah. Well, this is back to that. I mean, we can go back to that Brianna. What was that? The shooting. I got to tell you, that lawyer got on this. I mean, we shouldn't even go back to this, but that lawyer got up there. The lawyer for the mother of the girl who lost her life in that incident gets and makes this public announcement that this is indicative of the failure of the institutions in our system or something like that. And I'm just thinking to myself, are you kidding me? It's like, when did the institutions of the government sign up to raise your children? And it's hardly fair to complain that they're not doing it well when you're not doing it yourself. So it's not that I'm unsympathetic, but come on. I mean, you've got to have responsibility. If you're going to raise a child, then raise your child. So anyway, this gal calling for her daughter is raising foster children and doing her best. So I think the best of luck to her, and adopt if you can. And
also children of addicts. My God.
I know. What are you getting into?
My God.
It's like, it's such a shame.
God bless her. That's for sure.
It's such a shame. But it doesn't mean that you can't provide a good home for a child. I mean, it's that's awesome. Now, what I would hope here is that the adoption process will not be that difficult. Is that there will be few impediments, but I fear the worst.
Yeah. So, Steve, I did look that up when you were on the Blitz, and there are some exceptions to the normal adoption process in some states.
Yeah.
It just depends on the state. So if there are extenuating circumstances, like the child is from an addicted parent or abuse or something like that, there's a different track.
You can streamline it.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's hit or miss depending on the state.
Yeah. I mean, look, the government gets involved and it requires rules and procedures and policies and practices. I mean, you almost
documentation.
I know. It's like you almost just want to say, just let her do it. Let her adopt the kids. But I get it, because they want to check it out and they want to make sure that it's safe and whatever it is. But because there might be nefarious people out there that want to get kids like this just so they can, hey, trafficking is huge. People don't talk about it. Child trafficking is a huge problem in the world. Yes, it is.
And it's huge here in the United States, and people just don't know about it.
Yep. No, it happens. So anyway, best of luck. I hope she's able to get the adoption. Jay Michael is the guy, he has talked me through different adoption issues along the way. Turns out I was adopted. So I do have a special place in my heart for those who want to raise children, because it's not easy to do, even when they're your own, but let alone wanting to do it in this situation. So best of luck. And then we had the mobile home debacle.
Oh dear.
I got to tell you, and I feel so badly for this guy. This is like, I think we were off the air talking about it. It's like people make deals like this, and they're handshake deals. And how'd you put it, Jared? It's like, well, that deal's dead. It's like, that deal died with the guy.
Yeah. Well, it's just like Mad Max and Road Warrior.
Oh, that was
so.
It.
When he had the deal with the gas with the guy he rescued, and then they get back, the guy's dead. He goes, whatever deal you had with him died with him.
But it is an interesting concept. So there's something out there, and maybe the Exchequer can pull this up. If you type in statute of frauds, let our viewers see this.
Yeah.
The statute of frauds, this goes way back to like old common law times. And basically what it means
now we're going back to common law with Stevie.
That's right. It means that certain contracts have to be in writing. And the idea is you want to be able to document and get on paper so it's indisputable what the agreement is, what the terms are. And it goes back to, what's that say? I can't see a date there. I don't know my glasses on anyway.
Statute of frauds, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Key takeaways. I don't know.
The key takeaways are this. Now, in the modern application of statute of frauds, if any agreement's going to last more than a year and a day, you got to have it in writing.
There you go.
And if it involves real estate, then it's got to be in writing. And real estate transactions in the Western legal system. Here's the history. I like it. Prevention of fraud, 1677. There you go, English parlance. So you've got this idea that real estate follows the estate, it follows the person. So the idea, you want this stuff recorded. And even going way back to medieval times, you had manor rolls, and you could follow people's possessory interests in real estate. And that's sort of a history that's a tradition in our history of Western legal jurisprudence. You have this idea that land, you can own it and or you can possess it. You can even do both at the same time, and you can divide up possession and you can divide up ownership. So you could have a deed with your name on it, but then I could rent it to Jared, or I could rent it to the Exchequer, which we've been talking about doing.
Yeah.
And that means I own it, but you possess it. That's a unique thing. It hasn't always, it's like we take that for granted, but you can do it. I can own a thing. I can own a car, and you can possess it.
Motorcycle,
and you can possess it. Right.
Yeah.
So this is why that's the idea of it. And then it helps resolve disputes. If it's not in writing, then you can't enforce the terms of the contract. It doesn't mean, however, that you're SOL, because then, if people have heard me before talk about this concept called equity, where the king would come around, the king would ride itinerant. In other words, he would go around his kingdom and provide equity. And the old saying is, he who wants equity from the king better come with clean hands, meaning the equity is, all right, so the agreement can't be enforced as written, but it's just not fair to let this guy take my motorhome and sell it just because the agreement's not in writing. he was unjustly enriched, perhaps. So, so he got something that he shouldn't have gotten, and now we need equity. We need to equalize that. The king needs to come around with his justices. Henry II was a guy that was famous for this, 1189, I believe. But anyway, he would come around and he would say, "I'm going to fix this for you, people. You owe him X dollars, and you've got to you got to give him chickens or whatever you got to do. You got to make it right somehow." And he would make it right, and so shall it be done. I hereby ordain it. And then off he would go to the next manor to do justice like that. And
so 2 things, just real quick. So 1, that's the government getting involved.
Yes,
that's crazy. All the way back then, on a horseback, somebody has to come around and tell us how this can be equitable.
But this is
we can't figure it out for ourselves.
Well, no. This is I think this is one of the things that it's such an interesting tug or push and pull, because you need the government to enforce what we know to be natural law. Like you can go all the way back to
like to be an arbiter of natural law.
Yeah, and natural law becomes codified, and we need the government to keep the order of affairs in place.
Right. So we don't have a boss hog that just takes over every holler.
Correct.
Unjustly. Gotcha.
Correct.
Okay.
So the government is there to enforce the laws, not to do. I mean, look, they've driven a truck through it over the years, but yeah, you need the government to enforce the laws. Now, this notion of the king's justice, I think, in fact, I wrote a paper on this one time, that it sort of reflects a little bit of our federalism system here in the United States. We have the federal government, which under the supremacy clause of the United States Constitution ultimately is the law of the land, and U.S. Supreme Court provides the law of the land, and they can provide justice when needed. When things are not going well at the local level, when things are unjust at the local level, you go to the courts, and then ultimately you can go to the king, or the analogy would be to the federal government, and get your relief there. And one thing that I deal with, I don't want to say routinely, but one thing in my line of work is called habeas corpus, which it means have the body, bring the body to the king, because something has been wronged. This gentleman has been wrongfully convicted of a crime. It's unfair. Bring us the body. So bring the guy to the king, and I'm going to adjudicate it. We still have federal habeas corpus and even state habeas corpus to this day. And you go, say you've got a bad conviction. In fact, a lot of these exonerations you see later on, like on TV or Dateline or whatever, some of those are habeas corpus exonerations, where things have been so unfair and corrupt at the state court level. You go to the federal courts and you have habeas corpus. Now, then comes along back in, I think, the 90s, the Federal Anti-Terrorism and Death Penalty Act, which severely limited the jurisdiction of habeas corpus, but it still exists. And, I had a case that went up on habeas just recently, and I did not get relief. I think the judge was categorically wrong, but who am I to say that? I'm always right. So, but I do believe the judge was wrong. Anyway, the idea of habeas corpus is it's that extension of king's justice to fix things when they're unfair. And back to this, to Chad, I believe his name was, in the mobile home. If he's looking for justice now, it's going to be the king's justice. It's going to be equity. If this guy took his stuff and shouldn't have, destroyed his property and shouldn't have, maybe he can get some relief in the equity courts or outside the contract. But what's the moral of the story? Write it down, man. Don't buy a car with your friend. Don't engage. Don't have a handshake lease deal unless you fully expect to lose that deal when somebody moves on. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
It's not like he just wanted that mobile home off his property, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, because they destroyed it within an hour.
But I don't understand why he said that they tried to get it off, like he did remove it.
Yeah.
But the tire went flat. So it's sitting on a field. So I don't know if it was sitting on his field.
My guess is
my guess is that
I'm guessing he didn't own any of the field or anything like that.
Yeah, my guess is that the guy was deeded or gifted, had the title for the
trail.
Yeah, right.
Not the lot.
Correct.
And he probably got to get this thing removed by X date order.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have a signed lease agreement with the guy's dad.
Yeah.
And he, for
one
reason,
you haven't been paying rent here for years.
And then the lawful owner, the son, came along.
Get that eyesore
and he said,
out of
listen,
here.
You've been sitting here for this long. You owe me this in rent.
Yeah. Now that might not have been proper.
No, that
Might not have been.
Well, because if you allow somebody, there's going to be something. If you allow them to live there for free for years, and there were never payments and never a try of eviction, or you know what I mean.
Right.
So you can see that there was by paper and by numbers that anybody can kind of figure out there must have been a deal, because the old man took rent once a month. Everybody came up there, dropped it in the box. They never dropped one in the box. And so there was acknowledgement there, and the old man never said, "Hey, where's my rent?" Sent him a notice, called the sheriffs.
Right.
So it's like, so evidently there was something there. But now the new owner can be like this.
Yeah,
we're done with that.
Yeah,
sure.
New deal.
Now, you know what I mean? Then his fight would have been saying, "Okay, I will start paying." You know,
or even he probably wouldn't even have to say that. The guy could have just written up a contract and sent it to him, and said, "You got to pay me rent." And the guy said no.
But then again,
then it accrues without you knowing, because that guy put that in there, and he's the new owner of the land.
Well, what I'm guessing is there was an initial renter's agreement for the trailer to be there, and it was never modified in writing.
Yes,
it was just like, look, man,
that's what I'm saying.
I know you're running the weed eater. I know you're taking care of things around here. I know you're fixing stuff when it goes bad, and don't worry about rent. It was never written down. So, the new owner rolls into town and he says, "Wait a minute, why are you living here for free?"
Right.
"Well, your dad said I could." I don't recall dad saying that.
Yeah. Well, whatever deal you had with him.
Or, who knows? He came by and saw dad and he was like, "You always taking care of those stray cats, Dad."
Yeah.
I mean, they do a half-assed job. You know what I mean? He might not. I mean, there could have been something there where he wasn't a big fan of his dad letting these people live there for free.
Not at all.
Or whatever.
And dad had a big heart.
Yep. And he was like this. My dad had a big heart.
Yeah. I don't.
I don't. And that's, it's a sad story. It's also a pretty common one, I think.
Very
it is.
And
yes.
I guess the moral of it is, if you're in an agreement like that out there, if you've got this deal where so-and-so just lets me live here because I take care of stuff, well, get it in writing. I know you trust so-and-so, but when his son comes along or daughter or he sells, then what? So I have, for instance, tenants in my building. Those are all written leases. Almost all the tenants are my friends, people I knew before I have the building. And it was really awkward for me to go and say, "Hey man, here's the deals of this lease," and down to like, "You can't use the dumpster for this, and you can't." And then I'm trying to say on the side, "Look, if you need a dumpster key, just kind of ask me." But you've got to have that stuff written down, because say they assign their lease to somebody else and I don't have a clause that says they can't do that. Now I'm dealing with somebody else, or vice versa. Say I sell the building and then the new owner comes in and says, "You're out." And you'd be like, "No, I got a lease here that says I can."
Dude, that happened to me. I rented a house when I first moved to Indiana. Awesome house. A contractor dude bought like a half finish, and then he finished it. Bought it on the cheap, finished it. It was sweet. And I get a letter one day. "Yeah, hey, you got to be out in 30 days. I just sold it."
Yep.
And the rental agreement, obviously I didn't read it because I needed a house because I was moving to Indiana. And then I had no recourse. Gotta go. The ex at the time was like, "This is bullshit." And I said, "Hey, it's his house.
They can do it, right?"
And they can do it. It was like, yeah, I wish he would have given me the right to purchase it, but he got a great deal, got a freaking ton of money, and he's, you're out.
You got 30 days.
Yeah.
It could have been one.
Could have been one. Yeah. So
yeah.
Now which brings up another point. Let's say you're living at a place and the lease expires. Now you're rolling without a lease. Now there might be a reason you like that. There might be a reason the landlord likes that. There might be a reason you both like it, but you have to understand how that works then. Generally, in the courts of equity, in other words, outside the contract, outside the written agreement, it defaults. And now by statute, I think in Ohio, it defaults to the last term of the lease, except it's month to month. So whatever the terms and conditions were, now it's month to month. And
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's
for everybody.
That's where I'm at in my for my store.
Sure. Yeah. Now you're month to month,
because COVID was, it was craziness. A lot of people was like, "We can't pay our rent." I told them, I was like, "I can pay mine," but my lease was up.
Yep.
And I was like, "I would just like to continue on where we're at on a month-to-month agreement."
Yeah.
Perfect. Nice flexibility for you.
Yep. And they were like, yeah, we're fine with that.
And now there's a downside. They could say, "Look, guess what?
Yeah.
We got Marco's Pizza is going to expand, and whatever's next to you, they're going to expand." And is it Marco's?
Little Caesars.
Little Caesars. So,
but I do have a new wing stop.
Ooh.
And I'm going to have to tell you, the business at Wingstop has been busy in Westerville.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's like everybody's in pickup land these days. That's
Yeah.
That's a great pickup food.
Yeah.
It is.
I've never had it.
They're kicking the crap out
I've never had
of B-dubs. B-dubs is junk now.
BW3s. I've never
really
liked
went
their
downhill.
wings. It's like I've never been a big wing fan.
I
used to love their wings.
B-dubs.
Oh.
The original B-dubs was right down here, right on the Ohio State campus there. What was that? What was that intersection? I'm trying to remember what it was. It was it was wood crickle sideways floors where you kind of walked in. Yeah. It was actually really.
And then they had 2 locations.
Yeah, 2, right?
Like one in that little shopping center that had 2 stories, and then one down the road.
Yeah, down the road from each other. They were close because the one was smaller, the one was a little bit bigger there.
Yep.
And then they expanded. My buddy actually bought 2 or 3 of those out in Colorado. He graduated law school early, went out to Colorado, bought a BW3s, bought another, and then sold out. But yeah, they were the top dog for a while.
And everything is, I've seen, we're looking at the reopening, of our society, and you go different places and you see different things, and I had a meeting with the staff and we took them bowling, we went to the lanes there, and are people going to accept paying more and shittier service?
Nope.
No, I think, well, right now they will. Right now,
short term, yes. Long term, hell no.
Because we get up there and we had the meeting and we go and we could only rent 1 hour because whenever we were done, it had been like 10:30 and they close at 11. And we go up there and there's 2, like set of couches and there's a group of people that nobody was using the one lane that we're in the lane now. So you gotta it's kind of awkward, like, because they're using the couches and it's really nice setup there, Star Lanes. And so they leave. We're doing our games now. We've got kind of an empty lane. And then right as soon as they left, I saw on the screen lane, 13, we were 14, 2 players. And I looked down and there's all these drinks and pitcher of water. And there's just this big mess, right? And I said, look over at Derek. He's my manager, worked for me. I said, look at that. I said, they're about to send a couple people over here. I said, see those people putting on their shoes? And there's numbers of people. You've seen screens popping up. I was like, look at that mess. Like, and then I felt bad. Like, I wanted to be like, when they show up, like, that's not ours. We didn't do that. That was there. That was the people before. You know what I mean? But we've got enough stuff over here, right? And then in the back, there's this table. We ordered food, but long story short, there is that. So it sat there. And these people are like ordered their drinks, and the girl comes and puts the drinks right into the mess. Right. And I was like this, even though it's like, they got sanitizing wipes and signs to keep distance. Well, there was like no distancing going on. There were there were kids playing. And so now you've got all this dirty mess. And I was like, before you send somebody to the lane, shouldn't there been some sort of inspection? Just bussing it, but then still too, they're like, where some places the employees still got to wear a mask and they got to wipe. There was nothing.
The basics of our retail society have been shattered.
Well, yeah.
And
so then we order food and it shows up on the back there. We kind of go over there and the cauliflower pizza, we'll see it really probably is full of carbs. But anyhow, as we start to eat, I look around and I'm like, okay, there's no napkins.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And there's no service. And so we all got like greasy fingers with bowling. So I go into the bathroom. I'm going to get some paper towels. Well, the one box, like with paper towel, it was empty, but I seen this like partial roll. So I grabbed the whole roll, but I walk back, I see a couple other groups of tables eating food. And I'm like, they don't have napkins either.
Did you start serving them?
And no, I went straight to ours there and had the towel. And then finally the couple got somebody else over. And then they were like, well, how long were you here? How long have you been here? Asking them they're like, this isn't our mess. And I was like, it wasn't our mess. And I just was looking at it and I was like, oh man. And I've taken the staff there multiple times before, like after the meeting, go bowl some games.
Mm-hmm.
It was the same as when I went to Ted's. Now I'll give full strength to my ghostwriter in Johnstown, but
they're keeping up.
But it's just, and the people that are there are overworked. Right. Think about it. A package of ketchup used to be like, whenever I was buying them, I think it was like 7 or 8 cents for a package of ketchup. Okay, do you know how much a package of ketchup is selling for right now? $45. 45 cents.
Yeah, how much a stick of 2x4 lumber is selling for?
Yeah, well,
$11 to $13.
They're squeezing our supply lines, guys.
Yeah. Well,
just saying.
So, but you know what I mean? So now, then you've also got to where without raising minimum wage to $15 an hour, don't worry about it. People need to get people in. They need to get some kind of qualified people in, and people are paying high, employment rates have gone up. People are paying more. And they're losing.
What's going to happen is this.
Right.
They're going to raise. I just read an article on this. Now, it's funny, though, because McDonald's, I just read an article. They are now exploring in Chicago, I think, like 6 or 7 places that have automated drive-through service. So
that's where it's going.
I mean, I don't know if it's like the old push-button vending machines or how it's going to work.
They're getting rid of us, guys.
So it's like it's all computerized. And it's because they're saying it's in response to the minimum wage. And I think the other thing that's going to happen, what scares me the most about your story is this. It's like, to get people back to work, you're going to have to beat unemployment rates and then some. I can do nothing and make $11 an hour. It's like you can do nothing for $11 an hour, or maybe do some.
Yeah, but all that stuff isn't forever. That will shake out, because you only have employment.
That will shake out, but the topper is that cheese is through the roof. I say 44 cents for a package of ketchup.
No, I know. And here's the thing: after a pandemic, all this stuff should have been stockpiled or something. No, man, we're getting squeezed. Our supply lines, and it started last year, and it's ramped up ever since they quote started opening up, or whatever the crap, or the freaking stuff in the canal.
The thing
what's going on?
What makes this scary is that here these kind of political things. So we're going to raise minimum wage to $15 an hour. And the problem is most politicians aren't in office long enough to feel the real adverse consequences of that. So what's going to happen is people are all going to go back to work, and they're going to be making whatever, because the market is demanding it. And then they're going to say, see, minimum wage works. Here we go. Minimum wage works. It's $15 an hour and it works. Everybody's going back to work for this minimum wage. And what's going to happen is inflation's going to go crazy. The economy's going to tank, and here we are, we're stuck with a $15 an hour minimum wage, and unemployment's going to go through the roof again. So it just is it's just I don't think bad.
I guess areas are going through with the minimum wage going up, but I don't really see the need or the press for it. I haven't heard much.
Because I'm out of step on minimum wage, but I had heard that the price point per hour was where it is now was actually where it was at pre-COVID. So we're not. It's naturally there already. We don't need to dictate it.
Minimum wage is a disaster.
It is.
14-15 was already there. Beginning of 2020.
The problem now is we have inflation, and what's going to happen is, and you can feel inflation either directly or indirectly through things like cost of gas. So
mortgage rates.
Things are going to start happening where it's going to cost more for a packet of ketchup, so they're going to have to charge you more for the burger.
Yep,
and it costs more for.
And you want to know what prices have gone up on to-go packaging?
Yeah.
Especially during the crisis.
You had talked about that early on,
because people were going through it. If you notice that most places had nicer stuff, because all the cheap styrofoam seafolds are gone.
Yep.
There's the shell containers, they couldn't get them, couldn't keep up with them. So you had to go, and then the marketing kind of pushed to that, which, don't forget, that's all made out of petroleum.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and
all comes from the oil and gas industry, folks.
Yep.
Yeah, working with a roofer client of mine, he was talking about that shingles, going up just a little bit, but it's the other stuff they're going. He said a box of nails. Typically running $11, $40.
Yep. And that's just a supply problem.
Dude, a 2x4 stick of lumber is going for $10-12. Right. It should be $1.89.
I picked up 6-footers at Lowe's. They had them 70% off, but they're junk. But you could bit pieces out of it. I picked up 5 or 6 of them for $3 for a 6-footer.
Yeah, it's awful.
And now they're starting to sell. Have you seen? I saw they're selling cutoffs. They're selling like little 2-foot blocks.
Awful. Yeah,
for $279 or $289. I was like, I couldn't believe it.
It's like the freaking depression.
Now, we did some work down here at the studio, and I don't know what made me do this. I know. I do. I had my boys with me, and I was doing some work, and we were cleaning up down here, and there was a bunch of 2x4s that we had from a couple walls we took down. And I said, "Here, boys, I got a job for you." And I made them pull all the nails, clean them all up, take the screws out, and stack them neat and stack. And so I'm sitting on like a gold mine in the other room, man. I got like 15 2x4s, and I'm talking like old school 80s 2x4s.
And I forgot why I stockpiled this stuff. It's my dad. Dad used to keep boards all the time. And that was not necessarily a price thing. It was he didn't want to have to drive into town 13 miles away to go pick up something. I'm thinking, okay, Dad,
my dad would come over to your house and he'd be like this. Well, you got a 2x4 and some plywood, right? I mean, like it should just you should have that laying around.
Yeah, that should be just general stuff you have laying around,
and which I do.
So,
right, you know what I mean, and I use them, you know what I mean, for whatever I need,
shelves or this or that,
right?
But we're in a brave new world here where people are like, back to your question, how long are we going to tolerate this service? I don't know that we're going to have a choice. And what's going to happen is the cost of stuff is going to get so high that people will just not go out. I mean, it's like you can't. Like, how's it going to work? Like, if everybody wants to say or look at only a part of the economic system, and it's just like this huge conglomerate of stuff that depends on each other, and it just has to work that way. And if you're paying 50 cents a pack for ketchup and you're used to paying $7, well, you can't just say, "Hey, I'm going to take less," because you can't keep the doors open.
Right. Well, and I think the service piece of it, turn it around. If you own a business, do the best that you can, and you will.
You might.
You're going to shine. It's going to be
short term. People will put up with this, but I'm telling you, long term,
no, we won't.
No, there's no way.
I won't, because I do that. For me as a business, I will not put up,
especially with inflated prices. There's no way people are going to pay $50 to go out and have crappy service.
Here's the thing: we had it good in our country, because I've traveled to Europe and I've traveled overseas, and I've been to places where it's crap. I've been to places where quality control doesn't exist. And now I understand why it doesn't exist, because the government intervention that screws it all up makes it impossible to provide, and you don't have a choice. The market can't correct it. So you're saying you can flourish in the short term by providing a service that's better, but you can only do that so long before you're losing money too.
Yep.
And I meant service-wise, the cost you can't control, but do better service.
That's what I mean. But to get better service, you have to pay better people, and to pay better people, you have to pay more. And that's a scarce commodity. Labor is a scarce, like everything else. Scarcity exists.
That's true.
And if eventually you just throw up your hands and say, you know what, I don't have to compete because everybody sucks.
Well, where we're at, and the calling that I think is about the right number. They say that continuing on in the restaurant industry, restaurant bars, the ones that do finally reopen, 25% we will lose. Not counting what we've already lost.
Yep.
They're counting. They're calling for another 25% loss in bars and restaurants.
How could you open a restaurant those people? How could you do it?
Those people don't know they've lost already.
Yeah,
they've been hemorrhaging and bleeding, and they're just trying to get there. Yeah. And eventually, it just all runs out, and you can't keep the doors open.
Yeah, and expect walking into those restaurants to be fewer wait staff, from what I've heard, because they got to work their butt off, and if they usually had 10 people in there, they'll have 5.
How could you and like even the build out, like if you're going to go start a restaurant like that, the cost of that is insane. So now your lease is going up, and it's like nobody. We've had people in here debating this stuff with us on these socialist ideas, and it's like, you don't get it, man. It's like there's so much that goes into even to get the doors to the point where you can even open them for contractors to come in and do work. Like there's so many things that have to happen, so many things that have to fall in place. The cost, the labor, everything you have to do to get a restaurant open or a business open is getting choked right now. And
imagine trying to get your inspections lined up with your contractors.
You can't get a contractor.
Yeah, you can't. You right now, if you try to build a new build out, oh shoot, dang! I bet you 2 years.
Yeah, I'll get you in November, December.
Mm-hmm. I would guess literally 2 years.
So then you have to
see
pay
at the
more.
Crack of 2022.
Now, who can afford to pay more? The big boys. So that's what's happening.
Amazon, Walmart.
Amazon too. They love this because they've got enough in the tank. I'm not talking margins on day-to-day sales, but they got enough in the tank where they can throw dollars at this and take over.
If you look big picture, what has this all done?
Yeah, I mean that's right.
It's going all towards basically fascist capitalism, which is what happened in Germany, which is what happened everywhere else.
Well, it's China,
Brazil. Look what happened in Brazil.
It's what's going on.
You take away the small guys, and all you're left with is crappier service with giant companies, and so that's it.
And robots.
Well, and that's what's coming.
And the one
that's what's coming.
As a child, I mean, I'm talking a young kid, probably 10, 11 years old, whatever. I was always scared of robots. And I don't know why. I think it was because of people that, family. People.
Because you saw Terminator.
No, it wasn't that style of robot was not my fear. My fear were the robots that were in the automotive industry.
Yeah.
That's where I got the original scare. Whenever I saw that, how it could go down an assembly line and it can manufacture and paint, I was like, oh my God. I was like, that's hundreds of people's jobs.
And then you saw Terminator.
No, Terminator, those robots never bothered me. And then when
those are the robots that killed Terminator, though.
Like down to, I remember because every time I see like different vending machines, they're robots. And I've seen these machines that make pizza. Computers.
Oh God, that's because you saw what was that?
No, it's no movies.
That one movie.
I'm seeing
Maximum Overdrive.
I did see that one though.
Great soundtrack.
I forgot about that one.
Well, here's the scary part. The one entity, the one business, the one conglomerate that can afford the $15 an hour, the government, because they don't care. It's your money. It's your tax money, not their money. So it's easy to tell every government worker you're going to make X dollars. In fact, let's make it 50 an hour for government workers because they don't care. It's not their money. They don't have to worry about the bottom line because they get funded no matter what. And how do they get funded? Well, just pass a bill, borrow money, print money we don't have, and they keep getting funded. So it's like if you're the government is easy. It's easy for them to say, pay $15 an hour, pay this, pay that, because they don't have to worry about it coming out of their own pockets and their own margins. Like that bowling alley, they can't afford that. They can't afford to put workers there, and they couldn't get them if they could. That was the
thing that they, they've been closed. They're a bowling alley. Everybody touches everything, so they have been closed, and that's it. It was full, and they had like 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it kind of was like 6 or 7 people working. And there were probably, let's say I think it was like 20 lanes and a minimum of, I would say we could do an average of 5 people per lane. And it was rotated because there were 6 of us. There was 10 next. There was, it was large groups. There was, well over 100 some people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big building too. So it's all stretched out. They got arcade games over here and they've got a bar over here. And they've got, so these people, and they had literally one server who was running back and forth and trying to take care of this whole thing.
It's impossible.
Well, think about it, and think about what happened to them last year. And people think, oh, you just shut it down, whatever, you're not paying anything. No, you're still paying costs, people. You're still paying insurance. You're still paying maintenance.
Yeah.
You're still paying to wax the floors so they don't warp.
Well, even with DeWine,
so you actually have a product when it comes back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when it comes back, man, you're on fumes. They're on freaking fumes.
Yeah. And even with DeWine giving a green light at a certain date, that's still not enough time to ramp up to hire people.
No,
to train people.
No, plus they had to clean everything.
And you don't know what's going to happen.
And you don't. Though you probably could have predicted it was going to, everybody wants to go out and go do something.
Yeah.
But it's still, you're imagining it. There are no facts to that. There's no facts.
Right.
The problem, though, is you can't just employ 15 people today
at the drop of a hat,
and next week I'm going to be busy.
Right.
And Jared, just being around you and hearing about the restaurant business, it seems like that's the perfect storm, because in order to service a certain number of people at different times, you have to have a certain number of staff that exceeds those number of people to cover your busy times versus your down times. Yes. And then you have to order food to cover the busy times. And then if you don't get the busy times, the food's going out. It's like, it's a delicate balance of management and decision-making. And if you don't have the labor and you don't have any idea based on history or this complete unknown out there that you're going to get customers in, like, what do you do?
Well, that was, I had a staff meeting, and we haven't had one, like official kind of one since COVID, really. And we would go meet up, have meetings, go over things, sales, this and that, and then take them out. We did that more often. But then for a while, everything was closed up and it was all this. And it was first time, and I didn't exactly know where I was going because I only had a few small points of business to really talk about.
Yeah.
And everybody shows up because it was closing, so not everybody was working. Everybody gets there, and as we're standing around, I kind of started looking, and I realized something. I used to have seating areas, but then remember, we weren't allowed to have seating areas.
Yeah.
And so I removed chairs, and I put in my sanitation station. The stainless steel lift top with the wipes and the mask and the gloves and then everything there, and the steamer moved another. So now I only have these, and so I had to separate all my chairs. So now I got 2. And what's funny is that normally I'll stand up in the front and the staff will all sit down because we had seats for everybody. And now we're in there, and I was like, this, we got two. I kind of said, I was like, well, we've only got 2 seats. So now they were kind of standing up there, and I was like, anybody can sit down if you want to sit down. They were really sitting on some counters and stuff like that. But I was like, there's only 2 out here. So I ended up kind of sitting. Well, I talk and walk and sit and go through things. And I had to talk about how much has changed in this year. We used to have samples where people could try out the flavors to run through. That's gone. And just so the customers know, it's gone for good. But we talked about how different it is to sell now, because before they could try the product, get your sample to figure out what they like. Now you're going to have to just take a guess that you're going to like this $24 bottle. And so that comes down to the sales and working amongst them. And I said, and you remember some of them, they're in their early 20s, employees. I said, so if you ever wanted to live through something, if you ever wanted to be a part of history, here it is.
You done did it.
Yeah.
I said, because this is history. This will be taught. And you just lived through something.
Yep.
I said, we're all here.
Tell your grandkids.
We've all made it. And I remember Ashley, she's looked back, she's like, oh my God. She's like, I never thought about that. She's like, this is something. I was like, yeah.
You don't while you're through it.
I was like,
you don't though.
You don't get to pick it, but this is the, when you're old, you'll be like, you say you lived through this. You were here.
Well,
this is going to be taught and pushed forward. I said, and how it's going to be taught and how it's going to be reported.
That's right.
That's still up.
Right.
That's
the good
still
news
up for
is
debate.
all they have to do is check out Lawyer Talk. They get a perfect
timeline
accurate,
right through there. Exactly.
primary source of this history.
Yeah, this is your Depression. This is your World War. This is your. You pick it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I said, if you ever want to,
because it had death. It had,
it's not even here yet, boys.
Quite frankly,
The bad days aren't even here yet.
Speaking of history, we have been covering this date in history. So usually I would try to do the exact date, but this week was one of the most significant events of all time. So significant that the President of the United States didn't comment on it.
Now, I have
something. And the reason why we had a plenty is because of what Steve is going to talk about.
But the whole thing about Biden not talking about it, and one thing I did notice is that why didn't he tweet about it? And then I started thinking about the Twitter twat, and I was like, I remember when that came out, and I had my restaurant. And I was like, oh my God, people can subscribe to this, and easily every day we can give them our specials.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, this is great. I remember my partners at the time were like, Jared, that's stupid. Nobody uses that. Everybody uses Facebook. It's Facebook. I was like, no, I'm telling you, this thing's even better. And we see what now it has become. And then, so you look at that, and it does give you an easy access to anybody that wants to hear you. You can reach millions of people immediately and get your word out. Do politicians really need to be judged or asked about their fucking tweets?
Apparently the last one had to be.
It just, and all the politicians use it. Mm-hmm. And I understand the platform. It's there to get your word out and get things out. And it's just, but it's such a, why didn't he tweet this? And to me, it was like, well, why would they ask him why didn't he tweet it? Why didn't they say that? Why didn't he just come out and go to the unknown soldier or something, or you know what I mean?
Right. And I think I thought a lot about this. Did I really care that the President of the United States is acknowledging DDay, which is what we're talking about, or not? And the answer is I don't really care.
I don't really care either.
I don't. Now, if you're against that president, you're going to make a big deal out of it. If you're in favor of that president, you're going to say you're going to find some justification for it. But it doesn't really matter to me, except for this. If you're the president and you're going to take the time to acknowledge other things, then the absence of this one becomes important. So I don't think that the president of the United States, I don't take my cues. I've said this 1,000 times from the morality of our president. In fact, to me that he's the president, or it doesn't make any difference to me. But to the extent that you're highlighting some things and not others, that's where the problem is. It's what is left out that you would think, well, this is one of those kind of things that he has acknowledged for months and months and months. Why wouldn't you acknowledge this? Every other president has. So to me, it could be that they just forgot. Now, how does his staff forget about DDay? I don't know. I didn't. You know, and the people who died there didn't.
They're not saying they forgot, are they?
No, but what happened? You know, it's like, because back to your point, how hard is it for whoever's got Biden's Twitter feed
Yes.
to say kudos to the men and women who contributed to the D-Day forces and on June
6th,
1944. It's like, why wouldn't you just say something?
Because they don't want to give any credit.
And it's got to be so, but that's the thing. You're leaving room for an argument that you don't care. Now, I don't think it's true to say that Biden doesn't care about D-Day. I don't. Now, do his handlers, because I think that he might be in a realm where he needs handlers.
Yes.
But do his handlers, are they trying to make a point like we hate our country and Western civilization? Are they?
Well, that one representative was aghast seeing all of the American flags on D-Day at the memorial.
And there's a lot of people.
She was aghast.
There's a lot of people that hate the country and they hate the flag. We're going to get to the flag in a second, but let's talk about D-Day. So what we've been doing is we've been going back in time, and this is all stems. I'm not going to take full credit for this. When I was back in the mid-late 90s, I used to read the Columbus Dispatch, and they always had this day in history, or 50 years ago today. And it just so happened that 50 years ago today was always World War II history. And I love World War II history. So I'd always read it. And I thought, well, can't say 50 years ago because it's a lot longer, but we can just look and say what was going on in World War II around about this week. And the D-Day invasion had happened. Now, a lot of people have covered D-Day, and there's we could say what happened. We could talk about the invasion. We could talk about the subterfuge that went into the planning. We could talk about all sorts of things. But as we kicked it around this morning, there was this battle that occurred in the midst of the D-Day invasion where the newly formed commanders or commandos, the Army Rangers, were tasked with the almost impossible job of climbing a cliff on the beaches under fire. And by climbing, I mean like grappling hook climbing.
And ropes.
And with their gear on their back, that is their guns, their ammo, their grenades, whatever they needed is to fight the Germans, and then take a German 88 cannon that was placed up there in a big concrete embankment with other reinforcements, because that was thought it was going to wreak havoc on our Navy and the other ships. We wanted that. That was a strategic point for all sorts of reasons. So it was Point de Hoc, where they climbed the cliffs.
About 100 feet.
About 100 feet. Get a picture of that. We had a picture of the rope ladder they sort of threw up there. But the idea, is this up for everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Here it is.
So the idea,
what they climbed up, and they're being machine gunned.
Put your mouse up there on that where it is. So it's
right
like
here.
right there.
So this whole beach right here.
Look at that.
They were getting fire from both sides, but mainly from this side. So I think this was in between Omaha Beach and what was that other one? Not Gold.
Omaha, Juneau, Sword, and
the other one. The other famous one. I'll get to
it. There was a death trap.
Yeah. Right here. Utah. Sorry.
Utah.
So Point de Hoc is right here nearer to Omaha. Actually, Point de Hoc was their secondary landing because they couldn't get into Omaha because the fire was so great.
Omaha not open.
Yeah.
So they climb the cliffs at Point de Hoc with the goal of taking out the 88, the caliber gun that was placed up there.
And which was, they had all sorts of.
So imagine this picture. The Germans are looking out. Go back to that one, the one before. Like the Germans are up there in the grassy knoll area looking out and seeing all the ships. And then they realize that there's guys climbing up the cliff. So they just start picking them off and shooting them. Like it's almost, I remember reading about this years ago, thinking to myself, like, as soon as you get your head above the cliff, they just shoot you. It's like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
so you got up the cliff, woo. And then now you get shot.
Boom.
And then you're getting shot. It's almost unimaginable.
Mm-hmm.
The courage.
And these guys just did it.
The courage it takes to do that. It's almost unimaginable.
Here's the giant gun that they used to, protect against our ships. So it had gears that went around. I mean,
yeah,
just giant German. I mean, their artillery and look at this concrete. Look how nice this is.
It's still there.
And it's still there. Look at that.
Now let's see. Did we ever get the rope up there? Let's find the rope.
Yeah, I'll find it here.
So
there's our Ranger thing.
Like these guys, the Germans are safe in there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally safe.
There's the gun.
There's one of them.
There's
they had them all up there.
Yeah. They had a bunch of 88s.
I mean, look at these bunkers. That's 70, 60 years later, 70 years later. Look at that. Look at this concrete. That's beautiful.
And it's,
they should put a golf course up there.
It looks like Pebble Beach, doesn't it? So
oh man, there you go. Nice.
So you got guys, imagine just GIs, Rangers, and a rope.
And they didn't have Under Armour back then. They had wool, heavy wool,
Backpacks,
cotton, and just canvas.
See,
their boots were awful, just leather with rubber strapped to it.
See, like now we get down to like ounces. Like we're shaving off grams and ounces off our equipment, and these guys had pounds and pounds.
Yeah, where is that? I think it's on here.
We got to find the rope.
Yeah, there it is.
All right, so
right there.
Pull that up.
Check that out.
Look at that.
So that's that little skinny thing, and then you have guys up here shooting at you, and guys from the left and from the right, major machine guns.
Can you imagine being? I remember hearing the stories and reading stories of the guys that were the first ones there, and they shoot their grappling hook up there, and they're going to go climb up there. It's like you would think to yourself, there is no way I'm going to survive this.
So these are people,
and I'm going to, and not only that, you're there. You can't retreat.
These are people who were farmers, teachers, businessmen who joined up, most voluntarily, and decided this is what we're going to do.
Like these are people now. We're talking 18 years old.
Yeah.
Some 18,
17
19, 20,
years old that lied.
Yeah. Some of them lied at 16, 15, 16 to get in.
To go do it.
And imagine that, like go look around a college campus these days. I told my sons this. I was like, Drew, you're old enough now where there were guys like your age in World War II getting shot at, taking out German bunkers.
Yeah.
And your problem is you got to change the flat tire, which I made him do on his own. He had a flat tire. He called me. I got a flat tire. I said, I'll be there in a minute. And I almost regretted saying it. He goes, no, I got it. He did it. Took him a while.
Nice.
Figured it out.
Figured out.
Anyway, so these guys are young guys.
These guys didn't have a book to say what to do. They wrote the book.
Yeah.
They just said, we're just going to go do it. These are the guys that made it possible for us to have $1.89 gallons of milk.
See, those are the guys that I can always accept their tattoos.
Hell yeah.
Because
awful freaking blobs of tattoos.
And that was one great thing about the 90s, working at the country club there, and these guys that played cards and they had business. And, in the later 90s, they were passing away. Right. I mean, they were dying because of their age. But I got to hear stories. I'm not talking about war stories, but some of them would come up very vague, but I could tell their business mentality when they came back, because when they came back, they were like, if we did this, we can do anything.
Every day is gravy after this.
After that right there, they came back and these guys had these bad tattoos because they didn't know if they were going to keep their arm.
That's right.
They didn't know if they were coming back.
Right. They didn't care.
They had no clue.
And, and these guys, some of them, became very successful, especially like in the 80s or in the 70s. Yeah. They became very successful at the businesses that they built and what
Mad Men
and what they went through.
But they were always, they did not get the benefit of any post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD type counseling.
No, they just said, here you go. Come on back into society, guys.
And there's a movie, I saw this. It was, the movie is probably in the 50s, I would guess, late 40s, early 50s. Had another kid that came home. It's like, it just showed, it was like Hollywood's attempt to show the trouble that they were experiencing coming back. And, at the end was all happy. They got sober and they went back to their families and life was good. But clearly it wasn't that. I mean, and we all know those sort of,
hey man, let me tell you, my granddad, World War I, he was a medic on the front lines in the trenches, had a third of his stomach cut out. Some bitch lived to he was 86, smoked a pack of Pall Mall Reds every day, had his black label. Some bitch would walk up to the Elks Club every day, open it up. He used 10 bar, never talked about any of it. And rumor has it, he was a freaking war hero. He and his brother, Frank, my great uncle. They never talked about it. Nothing ever till the day he died. And he didn't get in, but we all knew that, Grandpa Fred was, we used to call him angry.
You got to show yourself. You got to show yourself there.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
There he is.
We used to think that he was just angry, right? And then I grew up and it's like, no, man, he saw it. He went through it.
Yeah. And we all had in the 80s, like there were still dads and grandpas around that had, like they were quiet. You just didn't talk to those guys. And, we had at Thanksgiving a guy that would come in and he started to tell war stories a little bit. He was in Italy. I don't know if he was at Anzio. I can't remember, but he would never tell like the real ones, like killing people in foxholes and And
if they did it, they never talked about that.
And
ever.
he would tell he was a quartermaster at one point. He would tell the funny stories about going to find supplies and doing stuff. Like, they were funny drunk stories.
Right.
And I asked him one time, I think my dad asked him, he goes, you were there? You were there? He goes, yeah. And you were in a foxhole? And he just sort of nodded. He goes, yeah. And stayed quiet
and that's
for a long time.
Yeah.
And he finally broke the silence and he goes, nobody wants to hear those stories.
Well,
so
and
I'll tell you the funny stories.
Yeah.
Now, I did want to hear those stories. I mean, not out of my, to edify
this
my.
This is World War I.
Two.
But if you think about it, who's in the foxhole on the other side? It's the farmers, the business owners, those
teachers,
people, exactly, that are against us, and they're scared shitless as much as we are.
Mm-hmm.
Why would we want to talk about killing somebody that they're frozen, you shot them, but you had to?
And the stuff they saw.
Exactly.
Just the stuff that they saw.
It's just
the human carnage that humans can do to humans.
It's not,
as
it's
I grow
heroic,
older,
but it's not something you gloat about.
No. And
you just don't.
I was in the army,
job.
but it wasn't anything like that.
You had to do it. You had to do it.
And just that what people can do to people is nobody, let me tell you, you don't want war. You don't want any kind of war.
Yeah.
You don't, people want what we had. That's what we want. That's what we want. That's freedom. That's everything. Man, all these people calling for civil war and all this kind, man, you don't ever want to see it.
Oh.
You don't ever want to see any of that shit.
No.
It's the worst. If you don't want your kids to have to grow up like that.
No,
what the hell?
And
people just don't understand because we don't have anybody today like we grew up with. I wanted to hear it. I wanted to know about it. It was horrible. It was so horrible they couldn't talk about it.
My father said my grandfather was in Patton's army, and my dad had said before, he was like, he had PTSD, but nobody knew about or nobody had anything of that. And nor was there any help for him.
That's what I mean about my granddad.
It was like my grandfather, he would drink, but he worked every day, even when it came down to where he worked at the grain elevator, and until he would have died on the day of, I forget the year. But it was voting day. He was going to vote, and he sat out on the porch, and that was the end of it.
That was it.
Yeah.
And so when they and think of the droves and the amount of men and women that came back.
Oh my God. Hundreds of thousands.
There's a funny story I've read about talking about guys coming back and being able to do anything they wanted. There was like, if you go back to the college days, these guys would come back at 21 years old, 22 years old, and they're going to go back and get their education. And they would show up on college campuses. And like back in those days, you had the hazing where you had to wear stupid beanies or whatever. And I remember reading some stories about these veterans coming back and some of these kids saying, well, you have to wear a beanie. And they would just look at them like, yeah, no.
Right.
Give me my Camel no filter, please. Where's the damn class? Right.
Oh, when they came back, they changed a lot of stuff institutionally. Those guys, just because of the way they were.
Yeah, they were tough, hardened.
Oh,
and they were. I mean,
they're like, Sonny, I climbed a cliff and killed a bunch of Germans. I ain't wearing a beanie.
But they didn't talk about it. That's what's so amazing is they were so humble about it, or so in such pain about it that they didn't ever talk about it. And same with Vietnam guys. I mean, there's a few I know plenty.
So
of
we
Vietnam
know a lot of Vietnam guys
just
because of my age,
right?
Yeah. Family members, uncles that all were in Vietnam, and then you always had that friend you go over the sleepover, and it'd be like, hey,
right,
his dad's a little crazy.
Yep,
he's Vietnam crazy.
My football coach.
We had a teacher, a math teacher at Westville South, and I remember I had a buddy, man, Charlie, and him and his brother were acting up, so his dad put him in boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, he would call them, they'd have to run out, he'd push ups, run. I mean, he was like, and then that was the whole deal.
Well, let me tell you, and like I say, so that war wasn't fought like the other war, right?
No,
I keep saying, the war today is not fought like the war yesterday.
Yep.
It's just as bad. And you talk to any of these Iraq guys and these guys that have been in Afghanistan, dude, bottom line is when you're scared shitless and somebody's shooting at you or you got to kill somebody, think about that.
That's horrible.
Think about that. Combat, close combat, hand-to-hand combat. I got to get my freaking bayonet out and I got to stab a dude.
Now
think about that.
Yeah. I got my.
Those guys are whacked.
Well, and that changed things out because then we got into, warfare that was done in city blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You know what I mean? To where you get trapped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was a total different. I mean, you go down the road, wrong road, you're blocked in. You know what I mean? There was a lot. You're stuck in one building.
Yeah. Plus, you're fighting an enemy that is totally brainwashed. They're in.
Yeah, they are.
So are the Japanese.
Yeah. Well, true. That's a good point. Yeah, they were.
Japanese were
the
fighting
kamikaze stuff. Yeah, it's almost kamikaze feel to it. Yeah.
There was. Yeah, they found Japanese in the jungles that
20 years later.
don't even believe that it's over.
Yeah,
So
Japanese. Let me tell you this real quick story. So I have on my mom's side, I have all the great aunts that are all the God-fearing people. They wouldn't buy any Japanese products because I had 2 uncles that died in the Pacific Theater. The Japanese had even the indigenous people so brainwashed that the Americans would finally take the island or whatever. The native people would take their babies and jump off the cliffs and kill themselves because they thought the Americans would kill them.
They were throwing kids off the cliffs.
Throwing kids off the cliffs.
And
total populations.
And the GIs were like trying to stop
it. What is happening? And oh my God, read about the Pacific Theater.
Oh, it's
horrible.
Yes.
Because those reports were coming back, like chopping off a guy's testes and shoving them in his mouth and sticking them up on a pike. That's what the Japanese did. That's why my God-fearing old ladies, they couldn't talk about it and they would never buy anything Japanese. Ever.
It's so
they had that old Zenith TV until it freaking broke.
Yeah.
Zeniths last forever.
Forever.
American
Used to.
Those were good old TVs. Yeah.
Big time.
Now I have an investigator I've worked with for years, and he was coming in one day to work. I had plans to meet with my team on this trial that we were working up, and we were in our old conference room, and he came in, and while we were waiting on everybody to come into the room, he started talking about Vietnam. He started talking about what he did in Vietnam. He started talking about how he was a tunnel rat in Vietnam. And I'm not just talking that he was a tunnel rat, like telling me stories about what it was like to be in the tunnel in the dark and deciding, all right, do I want my arms and my weapon in front of me? Or do I want my arms or my weapon behind me? Because you're going to go to a place where you can't change once you're in there.
Oh my God.
And you could run into somebody and you're face to face, but neither can do anything. I mean, it's like he was telling, and I stopped and I said, just stop right there. And I made everybody come in from the office. I put the phones on forward and I said, we just listened to him for several hours, tell stories. And it was the first time I'd ever really experienced a guy who was in that situation talk about it the way he talked about it. And it wasn't bragging. It wasn't, it was nothing other than just telling what he did. And I asked him about that. And I said, man, I've never experienced this. Nobody's ever really talked about this like this. I told him a story about the guy at Thanksgiving. I mean, and he just said, I came to an understanding with God, and this is how I have to deal with it. And it remarkable. I tried to get him in here.
And man, war is hell no matter what. I mean, dude, read about the Revolutionary War, what those guys went through, what they did for us.
Yep.
I mean, it's amazing the crap that the human spirit can put up with.
This is
power through.
This is a little bit more than just this day in World War II history, but I think it was worth it.
It is, because it's that was a huge day in World War II. Us coming, building landing strips in 12 days right there so that we could get to Germany and all that other stuff.
Yep.
Now, think of the perspective. So we always think of it from our perspective. Think about the English perspective, the German perspective.
Well, the French,
the Russian perspective, because those guys. So that's the first war where the country that lost the most people won. Think about that.
Yeah, that's sort of interesting.
The Russians,
you're talking about the Soviets. Yeah.
Yes, they lost a boatload of people, and they killed half their own people.
We'll do a thing on Stalingrad one of these days.
Yes. Stalingrad was an amazing. I mean, women fighting in the streets against the Germans.
Really,
the Germans
really
were that close to taking it. If they would have taken that, they were right on to Moscow.
Well, we're gonna shift gears. I'm gonna tell you, which is sort of relevant. But one news story I saw that I wanted to cover. We were talking about flags before, and we do. There's been a big debate, and I'm just going to give my 2 cents because it is our show here. But there was a big debate about whether we should fly any other flags on top of federal government structures, whether it's the Pride flag, whether it's the POW flag, or whether it's the flag, Black Lives Matter flag. And I read some stories on this, and I saw it, and we had eventually the Department of Defense came out and they said, we are not going to fly the pride flag over our military bases. I think some of our embassies were flying it. It is Pride Month. Some of our embassies were flying it. Some other government entities were flying it. And I got to thinking about it, and it was an interesting segue into this notion of free speech and what the government can do, what they shouldn't do, and what it is. And it just dawned on me that if you're going to put up any flag other than Old Glory, then the government is automatically. So I guess this is out there to those who think they should fly the pride flag because it's a good cause, or Black Lives Matter flag because it's a good cause. But what if then the KKK wants their flag flown? What if I want my flag flown? What if we want a Comedians on South High flag flown? Where does it stop, and then who decides the content of it? And to those who think that just by refusing to fly the flag, the government isn't woke or the government isn't doing it, what they're doing is they are preserving the integrity of the government to be an independent, neutral arbiter of the Constitution of the United States, where they're not going to choose a side in any cause like that, because then how are they going to explain to the other side that they're not choosing them? And that becomes a First Amendment content-based regulatory scheme over employed by the government. And so here we have the U.S. Embassy in Vatican flies a pride flag outside its building
at the Vatican.
Yeah. So I bet they're not
That's not
flying
political at all.
I bet they're not flying it in like in a Muslim country that is directly would discriminate against.
I didn't realize it was
gay
this
folks.
Freaking ridiculously political.
So that's a very political statement.
Oh, man.
And when the government starts making political statements like that, it scares the crap out of me, because what they're doing is they're saying, we're going to fly this flag here. Now what if I wrote a letter that says, I want the Don't Tread on, I always forgot what that flag's called, the Don't Tread on Me flag.
New Hampshire?
No, it's just the Don't Tread on Me.
No, it's got
flag.
a name. It's got a name.
I don't know what it is.
It's I always lose it. It's the Gadsden flag.
There you go.
Okay.
Now, what if I want the Gadsden flag flown? And, to me, I remember seeing this flag in literally 7th or 8th grade.
Well, we'll cleanse our visual palette there by having this on.
Well, look, what's interesting to me is when that was taught to me, when I first learned about this flag, it was taught as a very good thing. This is like, yes, we decided that we are not going to let the government, that is the king, trample us anymore.
Yeah, it's a symbol of our freedom.
Not going to do it. This was us saying, no more. Don't tread on me. We're free. And I still believe, to me, that's what that means. But now it's taken on this different connotation that somehow it's controversial to have I have 2 of them. And the idea is, to me, I don't like the government choosing sides on any of those political type issues that are controversial. So if the government's flying a Black Lives Matter flag, then how can you explain not flying a KKK flag? Because without destroying the integrity of the First Amendment or the integrity of the neutrality of the government on such things. So it doesn't, and I guess the point is the Department of Defense said, no, we're not going to do it. And I think they took some grief, but they didn't say it's not because we support the cause or don't support the cause. It's because what are we going to do when somebody else wants to fly their flag?
I want that flag.
Well, let me ask you this, though. I want to distinguish, and this may be nitpicky in regards to words.
Mm-hmm.
But you showed that picture of the embassy. I don't consider that flying the flag. I consider that displaying the flag. When I hear fly, I think it's going up on the pole and it's underneath Old Glory.
Yeah.
That's not what that was. And
to me, that is
because flying, I don't know. To me, flying, it's like all of a sudden, okay, it becomes antagonistic because they're flying it on a pole. If you're displaying it,
look,
I don't have a huge issue with that. It's just displaying it.
I don't have an issue with the fact that the flag exists or that people display it. I got a huge issue with the government choosing to display it in any way, shape, or form.
True. Yeah, like I said, it's semantics in regards to that terminology.
It's a good point. They're not flying it next to the United States flag.
And that's
but they are
fine,
displaying it.
But they are, though. You're right. You're right. Display versus flying.
That is the government taking up a cause.
True. Yeah.
And if they're going to take up one cause, how do they distinguish others? And you're going to say, well, that's easy. We're only going to take up the ones that are right. All right. Well, you can't. We have a country where we have the freedom not to agree with a homosexual lifestyle or to agree with a homosexual lifestyle, because they are the same right in the inverse.
Yeah.
And if I don't like fascism, What if I want the government to display a fascist flag?
Yeah, and there are certain groups that are,
or the big one, the Confederate flag.
I don't know what the term is, that they take over the flag itself. So when I see "Don't Tread on Me,"
see, in what's interesting,
before him.
But it wasn't
before him. And there were people that flew that flag all over the place. My brothers, my brothers had that flag. We would go on those 9/11 rides, and we'd have flags on our bikes. And my brother would have an American flag and a "Don't tread on me" flag.
Yep.
Okay, and that had nothing to do with Trump.
Nothing to do with Trump.
This is way before I ever thought he was going to run for president. For now, then you're exactly right. And the way that people, then the Europe, it's like, well, I wasn't. No, you know what I mean? How are you going to just throw me in on that?
And that's what I'm saying is scary about
just all kinds of people,
right?
And this is the argument. You were here for that when we had an argument with. I got into it with Mark about this, a friend of mine, about the Confederate flag, in not the country Confederate, but the one that everybody knows, right? So I got into an argument about that, and he said it's a racist symbol, and it's the only way to interpret it. And I thought, no, it's not the only way to interpret it. And what's happened is the Gadsden flag that we just talked about. That's what's happening with that.
Yes.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. Is flags can accidentally go that direction.
If my grandfather
not to display or fly,
if my grandfather died in the Civil War and he fought for the South because he just happened to live there, then I could easily have a connection to that flag and his heritage, independent of slavery and racism. And I could also understand completely that others would look at that as a symbol of slavery and racism, but I don't. Now, either way, I agreed with Mark in one significant thing. I don't think our federal government should fly that flag any more than it should fly the gay pride flag or the Black Lives Matter flag or the Gadsden flag or any other flag. It flies Old Glory, and that is it. And by fly, I mean display. So I understand the distinction. There is somewhat a distinction, but that's a matter of degree to me.
It is. Yeah.
Not the principle of we are united under one nation, and that's the flag we fly. And if you want to disunite people, then fly something controversial and see how well that goes for you. Because half the country is going to say, I don't like that gay pride flag. And they have every right to not like it.
Right.
Every right.
There's been a lot of companies that have co-opted, and that's the term I was thinking of, change their logo for the month to the color. And people making a choice. I know there's a local bank that did that, and they said, are you supporting this? And that bank commented back in the Facebook feed, yes. And he said, bye-bye.
Yeah.
But that's his choice.
Every choice in the world to do that, right?
Every choice. And the business had the choice to do it, and God bless them, they did it, and that's cool.
As a business,
that's why you want to do it. As
a business trying to earn money in our country, I would probably choose not to fly any controversial flag, even if I agreed with it. I'm not going to, if the Gadsden flag offends people that could be my customers, well, I'm not going to probably fly it because I don't want to offend people. I'd rather not have the conversation. Look, I believe in the Gadsden flag for reasons that aren't the ones that are bad that you think they are. And to me, it's a totally different scenario if Jared at his store wants to fly a flag, gay pride, Black Lives Matter, Gadsden, I love the police, the blue line flag, whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference because you're a private business and you can do it. But as soon as the United States government starts to do that, we are running down a divisive, slippery path that I think has consequences beyond what people see as the issue at hand. The issue at hand is, well, it's a good cause. You should support it. All right, great, fine. You can support it. But that doesn't mean that our country should fly it. And the only way around choosing sides is to choose no sides, right? You have one. And that's then you have no content-based decision-making on those kind of things. So anyway, that was my two.
I agree. That's what's weird about where we're living in now. Companies, you never used to know what the heck they were agnostic on everything. They're a company. Now, boy, it's freaking in your face about every political movement and all this stuff in every company.
Yeah, it's marketing and
it's crazy.
PR that's driving that they see a targeted niche market that they can go after. And it's like, hey, we super serve them anyway. Let's just put it out there and say we're going to. Versus our actions that we're doing it already.
And it's funny. There was a time in my career where I was representing a lot of guys who were gay. And it just so happened, right? I helped out some guys that came in, and they were there was one guy charged with OBI. We worked hard. We got a good result for him, and he started referring people. And it wasn't. I didn't care at all. I could care less. But I'm still not going to fly the gay flag, and I'm not going to fly a Black Lives Matter flag. I'm not going to fly a thin blue line flag. I'm not going to fly any flags over my business because I am here to help everybody. I'm not going to choose sides. I don't care. And I think that's changed now in some sense. And how that happens is, I think there's a lot that goes into it. But I think some government incentivization of huge conglomerate or of huge corporate business is part of it. Is that these companies now feel there you go.
How about that?
These companies now feel the pressure that if they don't fly this, then they're in danger of being canceled.
Well,
or they're
this
in danger
includes
of
everybody.
something else.
So
I guess, but you know what? I understand what that flag is saying. It's the same. So don't tread on me means the government can't tell you as a gay man or a gay woman that you can't do something, that you can't be gay. I believe in that as much as I believe in the opposite. So it's just so important to me that the government not choose sides and tell us how we have to believe, what we have to think, and how we have to live. And that.
Well, and here's the thing. Why is everything so polarized now? Why is it that, like you always say, Steve, two things can be true about something. Well,
multiple things usually are true.
And now the definition has changed where if you don't believe that definition, then you're racist. Throw it out. Throw everything out that has anything to do with any negative connotation.
Well, these are categorical arguments.
Who's making that case that it is negative? Maybe negative for you, it's not for me. And why do we have to change everything in history just because it had a bad freaking thing happen?
Well,
we're human. We're flawed. Nothing is perfect.
The categorical arguments usually to me mean somebody has an indefensible position. Oh, you believe that? You're a terrible person. All right. What do you say to that? You're a racist. All right. Well, what do you say to that? No, I'm not. Can we now go back and talk about what I was trying to talk about?
Yeah.
It's like there is no that's a shutdown type response. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. And I don't want to hear anything you have to say because now you're a and to me that only reflects a bad argument that's illogical, unsound, and probably lacks some morality behind it anyway, and eventually fails. I think all that eventually fails. Now, how catastrophic the failure is what we wait to see here. But
we've had a catastrophic failure on Audition. It had problem writing to the disk. So we're still live on YouTube.
Well, let's keep going live.
Oh, cool.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up anyway. That's about it. So that
gave us an hour and 15 minutes.
We have, this has been another live riveting episode of Lawyer Talk, off the record, on the air. We have lots of stuff going on. Comedians going on tour. We have the Patreon account, which people are stacking up with their dollar bills left and right. So if you want to be part of that trend, just go to channel511.com and you can too become a Patreon.
Tuck the dollars in.
Stay tuned for more live stuff here at Channel 511 on YouTube live. Lawyer Talk, off the record, on the air, at least until now.